Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca. On today's video I want to show you how I do the basic techniques for coloring your anime character using Clip Studio paint. The technique I use was inspired by doing through animation. That animators, when they mapping out the shadings, they do the mapping out the characters. So they map out the characters and they map out where the highlights, the shadows, where they're gonna hit and how they're gonna move along with the characters' movements. And when you watch anime, their coloring is very simple, but artists can actually manipulate, change it, and make it more polished if they like. And so this is more like a basic idea of how I color in. So it's very basic. It's not going into much detail, but once you've got the basics done, you can go from there. You can actually manipulate the shading, the shadows, and it just looks much more like an actual anime character. So to get started on mapping out the shadows, what we're going to do is create a separate layer, and we'll make it a sub color, layer color. And we're going to make, if you click on the arrow next to the blue, you can actually change the colors to any color you want. I like to use pink or dark pink, and make sure that's black because it won't show through. And what you do, so I want the shadows right here, so I'm going to use a G pen. And I'm just going to create lines underneath where the shadow is going to be. And move his eyes. And here. And also underneath. So now we've got the basics done. So that's the light. So now we've got the basics done. We can now fill in the areas we mapped out. So so above the skin, the base skin layer, we're going to create a new layer and we're going to clip it. So we're going to drop that shade. I'm going to use the fill bucket, and we use the refer to other layers. And I made sure that the gaps are quite tight and the margin is quite small. So what you do is just simply fill out the shadow that you mapped out. Yeah, so it's very easy. And if you want to see how it looks without the lines, you go to that sub color layer and just make it invisible, and there you go. You see that it's quite, you see how it looks. And you can also do a little tweaking. So if you felt like maybe underneath his chin or his jaw on the neck that you want that area to be soft, or you can go back in and add, maybe just go ahead and coloring that layer, just make it. So what I like to do is I go to use airbrush, and then the software brush, and I like to make the density between 28 to 40. Make sure the brush is large so you can get a nice coverage, 100%. And I use the transparent colouring, which is underneath the main sub and the main colour sub. And I just gently erase or move back the shading. and that gives it a nice sort of like a soft edge. So you can make soft edges. If you feel like there's some areas that need to be softened, you can do that. You can use any brush you want really. If you want to use a brush to soften the edges, you can. So sometimes you can use brushes. You can see that to make it sort of like painterly, you want to do that. Sometimes I use the paint brush to sort of blend in the that skin a little bit. And you can go back and use some mapping tool and just map out things that are out of place a little bit. Add lines. You can actually use the fill bucket and you can just paint unfilled areas, which it kind of fills out the areas that are not filled out properly. So yes, so I basically got the main shadowing done. You can actually, if you felt like maybe you want to add more, underneath, go back in there, you can, you want to. So we're going to create another layer above that and we're going to clip it. I'm going to make this, we're going to do the highlights. So for the highlights, I'm going to use the mapping tool. Now you can map out the highlights you want to do, but I tend to draw out the highlights. And you can just highlight where the most highest peak of the lights is, which is normally where the light source is properly hitting, and on smooth areas like the ears and nose. Probably in the mouth, not too much though. Also, you can use the airbrush, and using a very large brush, you can just softly highlight. You can just create highlights softly, also around his face a little bit. You can also add some. You can create another layer and also add some blush if you wanted to. Also linked it to the brushes, maybe on the warm areas, like, and go back and just gonna make the mapping tool. Yeah, we basically covered most of the simple shading, and this is a very basic technique. You can also add some warmth, or you can play around using overlay. Sometimes I like to use overlay. With overlay, you have to make sure that the color is very dark, and you can just increase the dark. I'm just going to link that. You can just increase that. Using the airbrush, so I'm using the airbrush just to give it a general colour, making it a little bit appear more organic or more alive. What you can also do, if you feel like you want to change the shading a little bit to a different colour, you can right click, do new correction layer, and you click on hue, saturation and luminosity, and you can just slide down the hues if you want to make it a little bit pinkish or a little bit more like that, maybe less saturated, or even more saturated if you want it to. And let me see. I think let me see. I don't really play around with that one. And click OK, and there you go. So for the woman, same thing. You want to create a sub layer, a sub color layer. So on the blue square thing here, you want to make that pinkish or blue, whatever you want. Make sure that's dark, or the main color dark. Oops, make that main color dark. We use a G pen. We'll just map out where the shadow is going to be. I'm going to try and focus on the strands of her hair. You can also draw out shadows, so like shadows, where the shadows are. Okay, so her neck's going to mainly be covered because of her long hair. Shadow here. Also there's maybe shadow in the lips as well. So we created a sub color layer. So for the skin, so above the skin layer, you create a layer and clipping. So you clip that layer, but this time we're going to use the multiple blending layer. So we're going to change that to multiple. We use the same colour, and we're going to use the fill bucket tool, refer to other layers. I'm just going to just fill that in. The multiple layer colour makes it much more more denser, but you can, you know, change the. You can manipulate it how you want, really. We'll use the mapping tool and sort of draw in. Right, I'm going to use the airbrush, and I'm going to draw back some of the. So using the airbrush, you can draw back some of the. Well, you don't have to, but you can just draw back the shadows a little bit. I felt like this is too much down there. You can also do backlighting, so using the mapping tool, but you still using the transparent layer, you can do a backlighting if you want to. If there's light coming from behind as well. Maybe around the ears, there should be light. So let's see how it looks for about. Okay, it doesn't look too bad. Use the airbrush tool, 20%. We'll just slightly smooth out underneath her lips a little bit, smooth it out. Also smooth out her. Certain areas. You can also draw back certain areas, like you felt like there should be a line there. So yeah, the multiple layer is a good, quicker way that without using another shading colour, you can actually use the same colour, just but use but colouring on the multiple layer, and that gives it much. You can actually change if you wanted to if you felt nah, this colour's not right, you can actually use new correction layer, hues and saturation, and you can just change the shade if you wanted to. But I'm gonna leave it because I think it's alright. But that's a very quick way. So you only need to use two colours, base and highlights. And if there is a much darker shadow like underneath her chin, you can create another layer, I think, and the same colour you can actually darken it more further. So it gets the more multiples on top of each other, the more darker it gets. It's a bit like glazing, or it gets darker and darker and darker. So I'm going to add some highlights to her using the same clipping on the same shadows. I'm going to use the highlights. Use airbrush. Make that 500. Make that massive brush. I'm just going to lightly, just softly give her some highlights, just to soften it so it doesn't look too flat. So I think the highlights actually makes the character a little bit less flatter, and you can draw back some highlights if you felt that it was too much. And I'm going to use a mapping tool just to draw in. Some dots. Normally you apply it to where the light source is heightened, so basically where it's most lightest. That's when you most apply it. You don't apply it on the shadow because there's no highlights on shadows. Also, let's use another layer. I'm going to use a pinkish tone hue. Give a little pink of pink. You can go back underneath, or you have a little bit of pink here and there. Maybe give her a blush. You want to give her a blush. So let's see how it looks without the lines. It looks alright. It doesn't look too bad. Go back to that. You can just make some adjustments. And what I like using multiple layers is that you can use the same colour, and if you missed out something that you missed out filling out the skin, you can actually use the same colour and go back to the base layer and just quickly just fill that area in. And yeah, I mean that's the basics of colouring with multiple layers. So you got two options with how you can colour it in. You can use the shade colour, or just use multiple colours, and you can just play around how you can colour in your characters. So on this piece, this is one example that I've used that technique on doing the skin and also on the clothing. So when we go, so here's how I mapped out my character. I mapped out underneath her chin, also for the clothing as well, and also for the cat. So basically this is a basic technique for how I colour in my manga characters, and before I start doing the colouring process. And the same thing using the filled bucket tool, and also the same thing as I did with using airbrush to soften, to draw back some of the the hard lines, the hard lights, you know, hard shadows. So this gives you a basic idea. So around here I use an airbrush tool just to draw back some edges, and some I kept. It does make it pop out more, but if the line quality is good as well. So if you draw your character using very thin lines or cleverly used lines quite well, that it can make your character appear more polished. So this one is like a basic idea of how you can color in your characters, and you can just play around. You can add. Sometimes I like to add. So yeah, you can see that I use the warmth for the airbrush, and yeah, I use airbrush for her clothing, so this is where the light is hitting. So this is a very fast track way without going painstakingly drawing out everything. You just do one line and fill those lines. So that's the basics on how to color in your anime characters or manga characters by mapping out the shading and shadows. And it's a very quick way of coloring in as well. So you spend less time spend less time detailing everything where you already mapped out everything. And this applies to also clothing as well, like I showed you with my illustration that I use clothing. And yeah, it doesn't take long, and once you've done the drawings, it's practically straightforward from then. Well, for me it's very straightforward from then. I hope you find this video helpful. If you'd like to ask me questions, or if I missed out anything or anything you want me to address, please contact me. You can contact me from a blog or on social media, and I'll be happy to reply. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.